Welcome back to IndieWeen, everyone. For those of you who have recently joined us, IndieWeen is when we look at an indie horror game every Saturday in October, all of which will be cheaper than a single AAA video game when we combine their prices so that we can get the most boo for our buck. I've got all kinds of spooky games lined up for the spookiest time of the year, so be sure to drop in every week as we go over all the flavors of horror we can find on a budget. To start things off, we're gonna go with something that's in a league of its own. I've played a lot of spookies, but this game kind of does its own thing and does it well. World of Horror. World of Horror is a stylized adventure mystery game where you play as a young adult in an oceanside city somewhere in Japan where things are going bump in the night at an alarming frequency. It's up to you to rally the squad, investigate the paranormal happenings around town, and if you're determined, confront the eldritch entity that's trying to make its way into our world. Don't forget to take a bath between cases. World of Horror plays first and foremost like a first-person adventure game while you'll be traveling from area to area, exploring and investigating the odd happenings around town. It's as simple as clicking on the area you want to go and then hitting the investigate button to see if anything comes up. You're usually free to move about the town as you see fit, but some cases are in a set area like being locked in the high school at night, a family vigil, or the festival in the old village. There's also special things you can do in certain areas like the shop ran by a sheep in downtown, exploring the school, or the hospital where you can recruit members to your party or get some medical attention respectively, but the docs have a limit on the stuff they can fix for you. You can also pick up and buy equipable items at the sheep shop or down by the docks. There's no designated weapon shop, but you can get things like lucky earrings for a luck bonus, a flashlight, and maybe something like a kitchen knife or a shovel to defend yourself with. And things like the flashlight can come in real handy during certain situations because items in this game have an effect beyond their stats. Something like a flashlight or an old-timey torch will act as a light source in certain areas, a map will help you get through certain scenarios, or something like the camera can act as a stun against your enemies by using the flash in battle. So what kind of situations will you need to use these things? Well, sometimes you're going to be confronted with the undead, deranged lunatics, monsters, or even the unspeakable. Combat is turn-based where you're given a set amount of time to act, and each individual action you take will take a percentage of the time you're given. If you're in a pinch, you can use your time to forage for a makeshift weapon like a broken bottle or a stick, or even just try kicking the spooky thing right in its stupid face. But after the first couple tutorial cases, you're likely going to be wise enough to make buying something to properly defend yourself your first order of business whenever starting a new campaign. On top of bopping the monsters on their head, you can also use items, spells that are closer to a Song of Ice and Fire's magic as a sword with no handle type deal than they are to burning a spell slot to explode enemies with fireballs. And aside from Cauterize, which is what the default character starts with that gives you a quick heal, and the Void ability, which the idle character starts with, which is very useful for getting out of bad events, and if you're lucky you can find one of the best weapons in the game, I ended up not really using any spells, so I think they're just a little too costly, at least for the way I play. Outside of that, there's also spiritual actions you can take, such as using some sort of thing to banish the incorporeal or things that just can't take physical damage. You can try leaving an offering to something that's haunting you, or you can perform a ritual of prayers with some combination of 5 claps and bows to try and exercise whatever you're fighting. Lastly, if you have other party members with you, you can try to use their bonus actions or distract them, but these are more on the lines of passive buffs outside of combat. Speaking of outside of combat, certain things can happen that will have an effect on your game. These range from minor injuries such as an infected bug bite or a broken bone to being marked by the gods. Guess which ones the doctors at the hospital can mend? Aside from your injuries, you'll also have whatever old god is trying to make its way back into your world, advancing their plans. It'll usually start with one effect that's a default for each god, such as the Great Spider making it impossible for you to run from combat, but some of these can get pretty wild. There's riots in the streets, roadblocks preventing you from easily traveling outside of town, tainted water supplies that will prevent you from recovering between missions, and my personal least favorite, the one where every time you get hit in combat you will sustain an injury. If you get that one unintentionally, because that is a thing you can willfully take with a medical history background, just restart if you weren't planning on doing that one. Lastly, the thing that ties this all together is that World of Horror operates like a roguelite. The cases you get at the start of every campaign are scrambled, so no two playthroughs are the same. Even if you do get the same set of cases in a playthrough, doing them in a different order can radically affect the outcome of your story, and there's also a high likelihood that individual encounters each side of each case are going to be different, and the character you choose to play as if you're doing a custom story can change things quite a bit. While each character is primarily a different stat set, you will get different kinds of level up bonuses as you go, and also what you start with will have an effect on what you can do later in the game. Lastly, there's the Occult Capital of Japan set, which is a new rule set and this game's equivalent of The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth, except not quite on that scale. Occult Capital of Japan throws a whole bunch of new styles of events into the mix and alters the timeline a bit, in case you're already bored of what the base game has to offer and you're ready to shake things up. Rather than be a separate executable though, it's just a box you tick when you're setting up your campaign. So as I'm sure you've seen already, World of Horror's got a unique look. From the start, you'll initially play the game in either the guise of looking at an old computer, zoomed in to just a screen, or a zoomed in version of the game itself, but that one also crops out part of the UI, so that's a bit of a no-go. World of Horror's rocking that big Apple II energy, or perhaps based on a few images I saw googling around, it's more like somewhere between Apple's 1 and 2, as this look doesn't quite fit either machine. The only real graphics options you have outside of how you want to physically view the game are what color that you want the monitor to have, and if you want 1-bit or 2-bit graphics, which are just flat colors and a bit of shading respectively. The game will prompt you to fiddle around with these two every time you start up a campaign just to keep things fresh. World of Horror mixes its look with a combination of that Junji Ito-esque Japanese horror with some Lovecraftian outer gods pulling the strings in the background. During the day-to-day case solving, you'll be looking into things like the creepy scissor lady that's haunting the school, or a ramen shop that despite everything about it looking and smelling disgusting, the patrons are drawn in by some unknown force. The day-to-day monsters are also things that look right at home in the Japanese style. There's also a few references to classic Japanese horror here and there, like how some of the students will tell you about this mountain that has a bunch of holes in it. And if I'm thinking about it, probably a few other things that I probably just missed. There are also some distinctly Lovecraftian lesser enemies, like how there's a sort of ooze caught by the fishermen out at sea, which compels them to fawn over said ooze until they go completely mad. Or occasionally you'll be reminded of the more Lovecraftian-esque things going on in the background, like sometimes you'll look into a mirror and catch a glimpse of this alternate world that's the outer god fighting its way into your world, or you look up at the sky and oh no, it's a big ol' eyeball thing. Lastly, for that aesthetic, we got the music, which also kind of straddles over the aesthetic category and the spooky category, but I'm gonna put it here. World of Horror's music is very much nostalgic to that time where we didn't even have sound cards yet, and the most you got was maybe an octave or two of beeps and boops. The music starts out pretty gamey, but as it goes on and you get deeper into the mysteries, it gets more and more unnerving until you're listening to what a competent creepypasta might be set to when somebody inevitably does a YouTube reading of it. So let's get into those spookies proper. So as a heads up here, there are a number of jump scares in World of Horror, but there are ones that you'll have a bit of warning for, and the real scare comes from how the creepy things are animated or presented to you. The monster design in World of Horror is excellent and complemented by all the sound effects everything makes when you interact with it or see it coming. Sometimes you're given the option to open a door if you dare and see what's inside of an area, and you'll get an extra little scare for your trouble. Even when the monsters aren't on the screen, World of Horror is unnerving. All the scenes that you come across have that aura that something is very wrong here, and there's an ever-present sense of dread as you complete the mysteries, which probably has something to do with that old god trying to get back into your world. The game also adds extra layers of spookiness through the text descriptions of everything, which is something I appreciate, as some horror games neglect to do this with their item descriptions, and it can go a very long way in making or breaking your atmosphere. Now, I talked about them a little bit before, but the adversaries you face will all have that unique styling of Japanese horror that really sell them when compared to other games in this nature. You're accosted by aspiring models that want to steal your face because theirs is falling off, a voyeuristic maintenance man who has freakishly elongated body parts, a collective consciousness inside of a telephone modem for a BBS board, and all the real freaky stuff like that blur the line between Japanese mythology-based spookies and Lovecraftian monsters that's just all over the place. There's a lot of stuff in World of Horror that I wasn't expecting at all, just because I had no benchmark for this stuff. Now, before we wrap up here, there's one major caveat emptor that we have to go over, and I'm sure a number of you knew that this topic was coming. As of writing and recording this video, World of Horror is an unfinished game with unfinished features that has not received an update in a year. Now, based on information I'm about to tell you, I'm not entirely sure that it's fair to call this abandonware, but the current state of the game is disappointing. Not much is known about the developer, Penstaz. I hope I say that right. Penstaz? I'm sorry. No matter what, yeah, I've tried. As I understand it, they had a professional life outside of game dev, and this might have been more of a passion project for them. But I can't say any of this definitively, as first-hand sources are scarce, and I personally am not willing to cross certain lines in research. Penstaz has disappeared before at months at a time. However, this was due to a complicated move in the middle of the pandemic, which Lord knows I know all about that because I had to do this too. And they came back to work on the game once everything was settled. People thought that they were gone for a moment, but after that summer absence, Pantaz came out with a ton of new content during October of last year, which was when I decided that I was gonna do a video on World of Horror, this year's IndieWeen. Fast forward a couple months later to December of 2020, and suddenly they just fall off the face of the internet. No more tweets, nothing on their Discord, no new posts on the game's community hub, nothing. Now, while some might cry abandoned game, there's one factor that complicates things. Before they went missing or just decided they couldn't or wouldn't do anything to the game anymore, Pantaz was tweeting about updates they were going to add into the game by Christmas of 2020 as early as the middle of December. And the pictures they posted showed things that looked like they were full features that weren't in the game yet. People don't just take the money and run after over a year of stated development, and they certainly don't make enough content to show that something else is ready to be pushed out to live before just going completely radio silent. I asked around a bit and got a whole lot of nothing, so I can only assume that whatever happened is a private matter, and I'm going to respect that. And while I'm here, I'd also like to ask all of you to please do the same. I don't know what happened here, but whatever did, I hope you're okay, Pantaz, and I really hope that one day you're able to come back to World of Horror, hopefully sometime soon. Best of luck to you, whatever's going on. In summary, World of Horror is a fascinating take on a horror game, but unfortunately, we gotta put a little asterisk here on our tally for prices, as no matter how you slice it, World of Horror is ultimately a game that is in an unfinished state and hasn't had an update in a year. Due to various early access growing pains, the save system had to be removed as it was broken, and unfortunately, it never got put back in. You can kind of work around this as global progress is tracked regardless of saves, and also, most of these games, a full campaign can run you inside of 30 minutes. However, there is an endless mode, which can be kind of hard to do if you can't save, especially if you really figure out how this game ticks. I'm very much going to say that this is a buy at your own risk type deal here for the previously mentioned reasons, because while World of Horror is great, it's also short and you can easily see all that it has to offer inside of maybe a week of dedicated play, or even a few days if you just got some time off from work. There are a good deal of things to unlock, and harder difficulties and the endless mode will stretch things out a bit, but without that saving system and the smattering of bugs, World of Horror's asking price is a bit steep. So I might even add an extra video on Halloween itself to try to balance things out, but don't hold me to that, I can only make videos so fast. Out of respect for what is here though, I decided to still go through with this video as I already bought the game and I did enjoy my time while playing it before I even learned that the game hadn't had an update in over a year or a year. I'm personally also not sure what week I'm gonna put this one out on, because I'm kind of secretly hoping that Pantaz is gonna be like, hey guys, sorry I was gone, here's an update, as I huff the copium even harder, but I just want to believe that there's good in people and people don't do things for malicious reasons. That's gonna be it for this week of IndieWeen. I hope you enjoyed this video and I really hope to see you in the next one. If you like what I do, please consider moseying on over to patreon.com/charlatanwonder, where for less than the price of a big box store Halloween costume, you can get early access to videos, vote on what videos I do next, standalone cooking segments, uncut commentary videos, and so much more. In the meantime, please stay safe, stay indoors, and wear your sunscreen when you gotta go out, wash your hands regularly, and wear your mask in accordance to CDC guidelines, drink plenty of water, and enjoy this cat video.